My husband used our life savings to fund his secret second family, so I sold his beloved classic car collection to start over. I'm Sarah Mitchell, and this is the story of how my husband's classic car collection helped me rebuild my life after discovering his secret families. But unlike what you might expect, this isn't just a tale of revenge. It's a story about finding strength in unexpected places and learning that sometimes rock bottom has a foundation. I met David Mitchell on a rainy Tuesday at UC Berkeley. I was the pre-med student who color-coded my study guides. He was the business major who could talk his way into, or out of, anything. When he convinced me to skip my microbiology final for an impromptu road trip to Big Sur in his beat-up Volkswagen Beetle, I should have recognized his talent for deception. Instead, I fell in love with his dreams. That day, watching the sunset over the Pacific, he promised me a life full of adventures. For 18 years, I thought he was keeping that promise. We built what looked like the perfect life in Sacramento's most exclusive neighborhood. Our twin boys, Alex and Ben, were lacrosse champions and honor roll students. I had my thriving physical therapy practice, and David's real estate development firm was reshaping the city's skyline. Every Christmas card we sent looked like a Ralph Lauren advertisement. But David's true passion was his cars. What started with a restored 1965 Mustang grew into a collection that made grown men weep. The crown jewel was his 1967 Ferrari 275 GTB/4, one of only 330 ever made. He named her Rosetta and spent more time with her than with our family. I used to joke that he loved those cars more than me. I had no idea how right I was. Every betrayal has a moment of genesis, that first hairline fracture in trust that, once seen, can never be unseen. Mine came during a routine dental cleaning, but for months before that, I'd been battling a creeping unease I couldn't name. I'd wake at 3 a.m. to find David's side of the bed empty, hear the distant murmur of his voice from the garage. Sometimes I'd stand at the door, hand on the knob, heart pounding, telling myself I was being paranoid. Other times, I'd curl up in our walk-in closet, surrounded by the expensive clothes he insisted on buying me, and try to convince myself that material comfort meant security. When my dental insurance card was declined, it felt almost like relief. Finally, a concrete reason for the knot that had been growing in my stomach for months. The name on the insurance portal, Lisa Chen, haunted me. I spent hours Googling it late at night, my laptop screen casting a pale glow in our bedroom while David slept soundly beside me. How could he sleep so peacefully while carrying such secrets? Maria, my PI, wasn't just thorough. She was ruthless. I've seen hundreds of cheating spouses, she told me over coffee in a dim corner of a cafe far from my usual haunts. But this is different. He's not just hiding an affair. He's hiding an empire. The photo she showed me made me physically ill. David at a park, teaching a little boy to ride a bike, the same way he taught our twins. David at a school play, filming proudly, while our son's performances sat unwatched on his phone. David kissing Lisa tenderly in front of a house that could have been our home's twin. But it was the financial records that broke me. Every major milestone in our marriage had a mirror image in his life with Lisa. When we celebrated our 15th anniversary with a trip to Paris, he took her to Rome. When we added a pool for the boy's 13th birthday, he built one for her children's 4th. Then Maria found something else, a third house in San Diego, purchased under an LLC, with utility bills in the name Angela Morrison. A third family, a third life. I spent that night in our master bathroom, violently ill, while David slept peacefully in our bed. The next morning, he kissed my forehead and asked if I was coming down with something. The tenderness in his voice made me hate him more than any cruelty could have. Alex's suspension from school came first. He'd beaten up another student who'd made a comment about serial cheaters during a class discussion on ethics. The irony would have been funny if it wasn't so devastating. Ben's withdrawal was slower, more insidious. First, he stopped playing lacrosse. Then he dropped out of honor society. Finally, he stopped leaving his room altogether. I found him one night, sitting in his closet, methodically shredding every family photo he could find. "Do you think he ever loved us?" Ben asked, surrounded by the confetti of our fake, perfect life. Or were we just props in his show? I didn't have an answer. I'm still not sure I do. My first meeting with Lisa wasn't planned. I was sitting in my car outside her house, our house's twisted twin, gathering courage to confront her when she tapped on my window. She wasn't what I expected. No younger, glamorous homewrecker, but a woman who looked as tired and haunted as I felt. "I've been waiting for you," she said simply. "I think we need to talk." Over coffee in her kitchen, identical to mine, down to the granite countertops, she showed me her own evidence. Bank statements, secret phones, a private investigator's reports. She'd been building her case for months, but unlike me, she had no resources to escape. David had convinced her to quit her job in investment banking, making her completely dependent on him. "There's more," she said, pulling out a folder. "I think you should sit down for this." Inside was proof of the third family in San Diego. But worse, evidence that David had been systematically draining his firm's client accounts to maintain his multiple lives. Millions of dollars disappeared into offshore accounts. "He's not just a cheater," Lisa said. "He's a criminal, and we're all his victims." What happened next wasn't just revenge, it was revolution. Lisa's background in investment banking proved invaluable. She knew exactly how to trace the money, how to document every fraudulent transfer. Together, we built a case that would not only destroy David's carefully constructed house of cards, but would protect all of us, and his clients, from the fallout. The car collection became our ace in the hole. While David was obsessing over maintaining his perfect facades, he'd forgotten that his precious vehicles were community property. Every dollar he'd spent on them had been documented, creating a clear paper trail of his financial manipulation. But our plan hit a snag when Sarah, my closest friend since college, admitted she'd known about Lisa for months. David had confided in her husband, swearing him to secrecy with tales of my supposed mental instability. "I wanted to tell you," Sarah sobbed, "but he said you were fragile, that knowing would break you." I cut her out of my life that day. Some betrayals can't be forgiven. The night before we executed our plan, I found myself in David's garage one last time. Standing there among his beloved cars, I was hit with a wave of memories. First dates, family road trips, the proud day he acquired Rosetta. For a moment, my resolve wavered. 18 years of marriage, reduced to an elaborate sting operation. Was I really capable of this? Then my phone buzzed. A text from Ben. "Mom, I can't sleep. Can you check on me?" My 16-year-old son, reduced to being afraid of the dark because his father's betrayal had shattered his sense of security. My hands stopped shaking. The next morning, as David left for his Seattle trip, I kissed him goodbye. He cupped my face in his hands, told me I was the only woman he'd ever truly loved. I smiled, thinking of the surveillance footage Maria had collected of him saying the exact same words to Lisa last week, to Angela the week before. The plan went off like clockwork, almost. The Dubai collectors team had just finished loading the Ferrari when David's lawyer showed up with an emergency injunction. Apparently, David had installed tracking devices on all his cars, and the movement alerts had triggered his fail-safe plan. What he hadn't counted on was Lisa's meticulous documentation. She'd found records of him using company funds to maintain the cars, making them evidence in a federal fraud case. One call to the FBI, and the injunction was superseded by a federal seizure order. The lawyer's face when I handed him the FBI's paperwork was almost worth the years of betrayal. Almost. David's downfall wasn't just spectacular, it was viral. The story of the real estate mogul with 3 families and a classic car collection broke during the annual California Real Estate Developers Gala. He was actually on stage, accepting an award for family values in business, when the federal agents walked in. The video of his arrest went viral, David in his custom tuxedo, still clutching his award, as FBI agents read him his rights. Behind him, the presentation screen switched from his acceptance speech to a slideshow of evidence. Photos of his 3 families, bank statements showing the fraud, the elaborate web of lies exposed for all his peers to see. But the real shock came when Angela Morrison stepped forward. She wasn't just David's third wife. She was his firm's chief financial officer's daughter. She discovered the fraud months ago but had been gathering evidence, working with the FBI all along. Her pregnancy, her relationship with David, all of it had been an elaborate sting operation. The look on David's face when he realized he'd been played at his own game? Priceless. Recovery wasn't linear. Alex's anger issues didn't magically disappear. He spent 6 months in intensive therapy, learning to channel his rage into mixed martial arts. Now he teaches self-defense classes at women's shelters, helping other survivors find their strength. Ben's depression nearly broke me. The day I found him in his room with a bottle of pills was the darkest of my life. But that crisis became our turning point. In the psychiatric facility, he finally started talking about his feelings of worthlessness, of wondering if he was destined to become his father. Lisa's journey was different, but no less challenging. Her children were younger, less able to understand the complexity of betrayal. We spent countless nights on the phone, talking each other through panic attacks and moments of doubt. Just when we thought our story had reached its final chapter, life threw us another curveball. I received a package from Eleanor's longtime housekeeper, Maria. She'd been holding on to it per Eleanor's instructions, meant to be delivered 10 years after her death. Inside was a handwritten confession that would shake our understanding of everything that had happened. Eleanor hadn't just known about David's double life. She'd orchestrated it. The pattern of parallel families wasn't learned from his father. It was a calculated business strategy she designed. Each family was strategically placed to secure business connections and real estate deals in different territories. David hadn't created this scheme. He'd been groomed from childhood to continue it. The documentation showed a dynasty of deception spanning 3 generations. Eleanor's own marriage had been arranged to merge real estate empires, and she trained David from childhood to view relationships as business assets. The classic car collection? Each vehicle had been purchased specifically to impress different business circles, their provenance carefully chosen to appeal to specific investors. Hidden in Rosetta's chassis was a microfilm containing decades of offshore account details, property deeds, and evidence of a real estate empire built on strategic marriages and calculated betrayals. The FBI was particularly interested in one detail. Eleanor hadn't died of natural causes. The evidence suggested she'd been silenced by someone who feared she would expose everything. The investigation is ongoing, but security footage from her last day showed a familiar face. Sarah, my former best friend, leaving Eleanor's house hours before her death. This discovery transformed our foundation's mission. Beyond helping survivors of financial abuse, we now specialized in exposing generational patterns of exploitation. Lisa's background in investment banking proved crucial as we began unraveling similar schemes in other wealthy families. The Dubai Museum expanded its exhibit to tell the full story, not just of one man's betrayal, but of how wealth and power can corrupt across generations. The Ferrari became a symbol of breaking these cycles, its sale now funding investigations into other family dynasties built on manipulation. Today, our foundation operates in 12 countries, helping expose and dismantle similar dynasties of deception. Lisa's children have grown into advocates for transparency in wealth management. My boys have found their own paths to healing. Alex through helping others, Ben through his art. David still writes sometimes, usually when he's hit a new step in his therapy journey. The letters go unopened into a box in my attic. Maybe one day our children will want to read them. Maybe they won't. Their healing belongs to them. As for me, I finally understand that the greatest victory isn't in exposing the truth or even achieving justice. It's in breaking free from the golden handcuffs we never knew we wore. That's a freedom worth more than all the classic cars, luxury homes, and carefully curated lives in the world. Last month, I sold my last piece of jewelry from that life. A diamond bracelet David had given me for our 15th anniversary. The money went to fund a scholarship for children escaping family dynasties built on deception. The bracelet now sits in the Dubai Museum next to Phoenix, 2 symbols of how beautiful things can hide ugly truths. And yes, I finally got that kitchen renovation. But more importantly, I renovated my life. Turns out, that was the upgrade I needed all along. Just when we thought we'd written the final chapter, David's empire revealed one last, deadly secret. A month after the museum opening, Lisa received an anonymous email containing surveillance photos of her children at school. The message was simple: back off, or they won't make it to graduation. We traced the threat back to a network of David's former business associates, men and women who'd benefited from the family's generational scheme and weren't happy about our foundation exposing similar operations worldwide. They called themselves the Legacy, and they were determined to protect their way of life. The breakthrough came from an unexpected source. Rachel, David's first daughter from college, had become an investigative journalist. She'd been quietly conducting her own investigation into the Legacy, discovering that it wasn't just about real estate. It was about power. These families had been manipulating local politics, controlling judge appointments, and influencing legislation for generations. "Mom," she called me one night, her voice shaking. I found something in Grandma Eleanor's old summer house. You need to see this. In a hidden room behind the wine cellar, we discovered a command center that looked like something out of a spy movie. Monitors displayed live feeds from cameras in homes and offices across the country. Eleanor hadn't just been the mastermind. She'd been running a sophisticated surveillance operation on dozens of powerful families, collecting blackmail material to maintain control. Ben, who'd channeled his depression into becoming a brilliant computer programmer, started digging into Eleanor's digital archives. What he found was staggering. Decades of recorded conversations, financial transactions, and compromising photos of judges, politicians, and business leaders. She wasn't just controlling Dad, Ben said, his face pale in the glow of his monitors. She was controlling everyone. The legacy didn't take our investigation lying down. Alex's martial arts studio was burned down. Lisa's car brakes mysteriously failed on the highway. Thankfully, she survived. Even James, my new husband, was targeted. Someone tried to plant evidence of corruption in his FBI files. But they underestimated us. Years of betrayal had taught us resilience. Lisa's investment banking skills helped us follow the money. Rachel's journalistic instincts uncovered the stories. Ben's technical expertise gave us access to their communications. And Alex? His martial arts studio might have been gone, but he'd trained an army of survivors who were ready to fight back. The truth was bigger than we'd imagined. Eleanor's network extended beyond America. The legacy had chapters in every major financial capital. They didn't just control real estate. They influenced elections, manipulated markets, and decided the fates of entire communities. We found evidence of similar operations in London, Dubai, Singapore, and Moscow. Each hub was run by a family like ours, with carefully arranged marriages and strategic children. David's 3 families weren't an anomaly. They were part of a business model that had been refined over generations. The breakthrough came at a terrible cost. Sarah, my former best friend who we'd suspected in Eleanor's death, was found in her cell the day before she was supposed to testify. The official report said suicide, but we knew better. Her last message to me read, "I was trying to stop her." Eleanor was going to expose everything, but not to help people. She was planning to take full control. I thought I was protecting everyone. I'm sorry, Sarah. Make it right. The legacy made their final move at the Dubai Museum's annual gala. They'd planted bombs throughout the building, threatening to destroy their evidence along with hundreds of innocent lives. But they didn't know about Ben's backup servers, or Alex's security team, or the dozens of survivors we'd helped who now worked in law enforcement worldwide. As their leaders were led away in handcuffs, I stood in front of Rosetta, now Phoenix, watching the sunrise through the museum's glass walls. The car that had once symbolized David's obsession with appearances now represented something else, the power of turning pain into purpose. Today, our foundation doesn't just help abuse survivors. It's become a global watchdog organization. We've helped expose similar operations in 30 countries. Lisa runs our financial intelligence unit. Rachel leads our investigative journalism department. Ben's cybersecurity team protects whistleblowers worldwide. And Alex? His new chain of martial arts studios doubles as safe houses for families escaping situations like ours. David wrote to me from prison after the legacy fell. I thought I was playing the game, his letter read. But we were all just pieces on Eleanor's board. You did what I never could. You broke free. The letter joined the others in my attic, but this time, I kept a copy. Not because I'd forgiven him, but because it marked the moment our story changed from one of victims to victors. Last week, I watched Alex's daughter practice for her first martial arts competition. Next to her was Lisa's son, now a junior financial analyst helping track suspicious family trusts. In the audience, Ben's twins played with Rachel's little boy while their fathers discussed the Foundation's latest cybersecurity upgrades. Looking at them, I realized something profound. We hadn't just exposed a conspiracy or brought down an empire. We'd shown our children that legacy isn't about maintaining power. It's about using your strength to protect others. The Dubai Museum recently added a new wing dedicated to exposing financial abuse and generational manipulation. At its center sits Phoenix, surrounded by evidence of the legacy's crimes and stories of survivors who fought back. But the most powerful exhibit is the smallest, a simple wedding ring in a glass case. Not mine or Lisa's, but Eleanor's. Inside, a microscopic chip contained her entire surveillance database. She'd literally worn her power on her finger, a queen controlling her empire with a golden band. The plaque beneath it reads, "Some chains are made of gold. True wealth lies in breaking them." As for me, I finally understand that the greatest revenge isn't just exposing the truth or helping others escape. It's creating a world where such empires can't exist in the first place. That's a legacy worth building. And yes, that kitchen renovation I always wanted, I turned it into a community cooking space where survivors learn to feed their souls as well as their bodies. Because sometimes, the best way to heal isn't to rebuild your walls. It's to tear them down completely and plant a garden instead. The threats against our children escalated beyond anything we'd imagined. Alex's daughter, Emma, was kidnapped from her martial arts practice. The kidnappers didn't want money. They wanted the Eleanor files. We had 48 hours. What they didn't know was that Emma, at just 12, was already her father's daughter. The moment they let their guard down, she used the self-defense moves Alex had drilled into her since she could walk. The security camera footage showed her taking down 2 grown men with techniques we developed specifically for survivors. But the emotional toll was devastating. That night, I found Alex in his old bedroom, clutching Emma's first GI uniform, sobbing uncontrollably. "I became exactly what I hated," he choked out. "I turned my daughter into a weapon because I was so afraid of her being a victim." Ben's struggle took a different turn. His cybersecurity work led him down dark paths, tracking legacy members through the digital underworld. He became obsessed, spending days without sleep, his room covered in screens showing surveillance feeds. The breaking point came when he hacked into David's prison communications and discovered something chilling. Our father had been orchestrating hits on legacy members from behind bars, playing both sides to ensure his own survival. "He's still trying to control everything," Ben said, his hands shaking as he showed me the evidence. And the worst part? For a moment, I understood him. I wanted that control too. That confession led to a breakthrough in therapy. Ben finally confronting his fear of becoming his father, of finding that same darkness within himself. The action came to a head during what should have been a routine evidence transfer. Lisa and I were transporting Eleanor's ring to a secure facility when 3 black SUVs boxed us in on the highway. What followed was a high-speed chase through Sacramento's rush-hour traffic, with Lisa demonstrating driving skills I never knew she had. 7 years of defensive driving courses, she shouted, executing a perfect J-turn. After David, I swore I'd never be helpless again. We ended up cornered on the old Tower Bridge. As armed men approached our car, Lisa reached for what I thought was a weapon. Instead, she pulled out a flash drive. "Everything they want is already uploaded to servers worldwide," she announced over the car's speaker system. Eleanor taught me one useful thing: always have a backup plan. The most unexpected development came from David's prison cell. He'd been diagnosed with terminal cancer, and his last act was to gather all his children, known and previously unknown, for a final confession. Rachel, the journalist, filmed it all. Alex stood guard, muscles tense. Ben monitored the surveillance feeds. Lisa's children held hands with mine, watching the father they barely knew tell the full story of how Eleanor had selected their mothers, arranged their chance meetings, and orchestrated every detail of their lives. "I thought I was playing the game," David wheezed, "but I was just another piece on her board. My only real achievement was having children strong enough to break free." The final confrontation happened at Eleanor's old estate during a legacy board meeting. They gathered to plan their counterattack, not realizing that every member of our extended family was already in place. Alex and his students had infiltrated security. Ben's tech team had control of all systems. Rachel's journalists were positioned with cameras. Lisa's financial experts stood ready to freeze accounts. When the legacy realized they were trapped, they tried to burn the evidence, and the house, down. What followed was a room-by-room battle through the burning mansion, with Alex leading a team to rescue trapped staff members while Ben worked to download crucial files before the servers melted. The real shock came when we found Sarah alive in Eleanor's secret bunker. She hadn't committed suicide in prison. She'd faked her death to infiltrate the legacy's inner circle. For years, she'd been gathering evidence, trying to make amends for her role in Eleanor's death. Her final act was pushing me out of the way of a falling beam in the burning house, taking the hit herself. As I held her hand in the ambulance, she smiled through her pain. "I chose the wrong legacy to protect," she whispered. "But you built something worth preserving." Today, The foundation has evolved into something Eleanor could never have imagined. A global network of survivors helping other survivors. Alex doesn't just teach self-defense. He runs a program helping abuse victims rebuild their confidence. Ben uses his tech skills to protect whistleblowers. Rachel's journalism has exposed similar schemes worldwide. The most powerful moment came last month when Emma, Alex's daughter, competed in her first international martial arts tournament. She dedicated her gold medal to all the kids who had to grow up too fast. There wasn't a dry eye in the arena. The Dubai Museum's newest exhibit isn't about cars anymore. It's about transformation. Rosetta, now Phoenix, sits at its center, but surrounding it are stories of survival, strength, and redemption. David died last week. His funeral was attended by all his children, each carrying a piece of his car collection to lay on his grave. Not out of respect for him, but as a symbol of the chains we'd broken. The real story, I finally realized, wasn't about revenge or even justice. It was about the courage to face our own darkness, the strength to protect others from it, and the wisdom to transform pain into purpose. As for me, that kitchen where I once felt trapped is now a gathering place for survivors learning to reclaim their lives. Because the best revenge isn't just living well, it's helping others live better. And sometimes, the most powerful legacy is teaching others how to break free from theirs. The most devastating revelation came during Emma's recovery after the kidnapping. While reviewing the security footage, Ben noticed something that shattered our world again. One of the kidnappers had Eleanor's distinctive gesture, the way she'd adjust her glasses with her pinky finger. "That's impossible," Lisa whispered. "Eleanor's been dead for years." Further investigation revealed the kidnapper was Eleanor's secret daughter, my husband's half-sister, raised in Europe and groomed as Eleanor's true successor. Charlotte Eleanor Mitchell, the hidden heir to the legacy of lies. The confrontation between Alex and Charlotte became the emotional core of our struggle. She was everything Eleanor had wanted in an heir. Brilliant, ruthless, and completely devoted to maintaining the family's power. But she was also, undeniably, family. "You're just like him," Charlotte spat at Alex during their first meeting. David played his role perfectly, the charming failure, the man who couldn't handle the empire. It kept everyone's eyes off me while I learned at Mother's feet. Alex's response surprised us all. "No," he said quietly. "I'm like you, trained from birth to be someone else's weapon. The difference is, I chose to break the blade." Ben's breakthrough came at a terrible cost. While diving deeper into Eleanor's files, he discovered that his depression wasn't just a reaction to trauma, it had been chemically induced. Eleanor had been having her personal physician slip medication into both boys' food since childhood, ensuring they'd be too unstable to threaten her plans. The night Ben learned this truth, he disappeared. We found him in Eleanor's old study, systematically destroying every photo of her with methodical rage. Lisa's son, Michael, was the one who finally got through to him. "You don't have to destroy the evidence to destroy her power," Michael said, taking the photos from Ben's trembling hands. "We can use it to help others recognize the signs." During David's final confession, Rachel asked the question we'd all avoided. "Did you ever love any of us?" The silence stretched for an eternity before he answered, "I loved you all enough to keep you separate. Eleanor, she wanted to raise you all together, create competition, let the strongest emerge as heir. I thought I was protecting you by keeping you apart." Lisa stood up then, her voice shaking. "You didn't protect us. You denied us the one thing that could have stopped her, each other." The most powerful scene at the burning mansion wasn't the fight. It was what happened after. As the flames spread, we found Eleanor's private diary room. Inside, surrounded by journals documenting decades of manipulation, was a wall of surveillance photos. But they weren't blackmail material. They were pictures of all her grandchildren, documented from birth. Every milestone, every achievement, every moment of strength or defiance. She'd been studying us, analyzing which traits to nurture or suppress in the next generation. Charlotte found us there. The look on her face when she saw the photos, when she realized she too had been just another experiment, broke something in her that all our fighting couldn't. Emma's martial arts tournament became a turning point for more than just her. Every one of David's children attended, a family reunion he never intended. As she moved through her forms, you could see elements of everyone's influence. Alex's strength, Ben's strategic mind, Rachel's determination, Lisa's grace under pressure. Charlotte came too, standing in the shadows at the back. When Emma won, she didn't just dedicate her victory to survivors. She walked straight to Charlotte and offered her the medal. "This is for all of us who had to learn to fight too young," Emma said. "Even the ones who hadn't learned they were fighting yet." Sarah's sacrifice in the burning mansion led to the discovery of Eleanor's last secret. She had been trying to change at the end. Her surveillance wasn't just about control. She'd been gathering evidence to dismantle similar operations worldwide, realizing too late the monster she'd created. Sarah had found this truth and tried to help Eleanor, but the legacy's other members had already moved to silence them both. Her years undercover weren't just about redemption. They were about finishing what Eleanor had been too late to start. Today, our foundation doesn't just help survivors escape. It helps them understand. Ben's research into Eleanor's psychological manipulation techniques has become a groundbreaking study in generational trauma. Alex and Emma's self-defense program now includes psychological training to recognize emotional manipulation. Charlotte eventually joined us, bringing with her Eleanor's European networks. Her insight into the legacy's methods has been invaluable, but more importantly, she's found what Eleanor never could: genuine family bonds built on choice rather than control. The Dubai Museum's newest wing includes a simple display, a family tree. But instead of showing births and marriages, it shows moments of choice. Each point where someone chose truth over power, healing over control, love over legacy. David's funeral brought one final revelation. In his last letter, he wrote, "Eleanor chose me because I was weak enough to be controlled but strong enough to produce children who wouldn't be. Your strength isn't your rebellion. It's your ability to choose a different kind of power. As for me, I finally understand that true strength isn't in surviving betrayal. It's in learning to trust again." That kitchen where I once felt trapped now hosts weekly family dinners, where all of Eleanor's grandchildren gather to share meals and stories, building the kind of legacy that can't be bought or controlled. Genuine love. Because sometimes the most powerful revolution isn't in tearing down an empire. It's in building a family that never needed one in the first place. Thank you for watching. If you haven't subscribed yet, please do so and hit the notification bell to stay updated with more real-life stories.